I call the April 24, 2025 Manvel Parks Board meeting to order. Starting with a roll call. Linda Dunn. Paul Sofka.
Here.
Larry Akery.
Here.
Brian Sarmiento.
Byron Sarmiento here.
Mary Ann Atkinson.
Here.
Ellen Nagley.
Here.
All right. Ex officio, Keith Bonner.
Here.
Alternate, Luis Leah.
Here.
Thank you. All right. Can we all stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, now we would like to open the floor up for public comments. All right, if there are no public comments, let's go ahead and get right into the agenda. Agenda item A, consideration and possible action on City Hall Park facilities.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Gerber with PGL, and Michael Mowers here with M2L. We're going to present, we've been working on refining the final details of the park across the street, and we have some options that we want to get final selections on as we're ready to go out for bid. And we just want to get your input on what the final configuration will be. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Great. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good to be back. As Jeff was saying, we're at the tail end of our visioning efforts for the park. And what I want to do is show the plan that we had presented some time back now. And there are a number of things that we're looking for some input on that affect the final documentation and affect the package that will ultimately go out to bid. And there's a number of different approaches that we're going to show for the pavilion element, which is a key feature, the signature gazebo, the photo opportunity that we have. We do have some information on a restroom building prototype that we have worked through. We'll talk a little bit about that. There are some playground options. If you've been to any playgrounds in your lifetime or with your kids or your grandkids, there are so many different ideas and ways to approach this. I'm going to show some different options and some styles to get your input. If we don't walk out with a specific design today or a direction, that's okay, but we do need something fairly quickly as we kind of move through this process. And just so you know what we do, our approach is we pick a general direction based on some of the imagery and the look that we want, and then we'll work with the manufacturer to put something together that we can put into a bid package. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the only opportunity that we have to look at it or staff to look at it. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I'll just show some imagery of what we think that the dog park can include as far as some features. And once again, there's just so many different options out there. Just wanted to give you some of the things that we commonly see and we have commonly put into dog parks.
So, Michael, can I interrupt
sure.
for 1 second? So one thing I did want to just remind, we talked about the budget the last time we were here, and that all of these elements are more money than we had allocated for the project. So what our approach is going to be is that we're going to bid each of these park elements as an alternate, so that there will be an isolated price for that. And then the city can make choices about whether they want to include any of those in the bid or preserve those for a future purchase or for future funding. Is that a fair approach to say? And so just keep that in mind today in terms of that, is that we're going to put all the infrastructure in, in the base bid, all of the underground, conduits and things that will support a future addition if it turns out to be a future addition. But then each of the finished pieces will be a bid as an add alternate to the project. And then on bid day, the city can choose which pieces they want to include in that particular contract.
Okay, good. So this is the plan. This has not changed since the last time we visited, but I'll just give a brief update. So there's really 4 sections to this. The east section is the detention dog park area. You can see some very specific things. That curvilinear band is what we are proposing to manipulate what they call a pilot channel for the drainage, but we're talking about doing it in a stone material so it doesn't look so constructed. And so that's kind of the one feature, and I'll show some imagery of that. The playground area a little bit farther to the west with the restroom building up between the parking area where it pushes back into the site. The central area, which would be the pavilion with ample space for booths, exhibits, whatever you might want to do in that area that would be uncovered to complement what would be part of the pavilion. And then farther west is the gazebo or a more quiet place of solitude, picture spot. It's really nice. You have some of your nice trees that we're going to be saving are in that particular area. So this is the overall vision of all the different elements as to how that would look. And then what Jeff was talking about in terms of what we think would be the base bid would be dog park, the parking, restroom building, the framework and bones of the park, the access, but all the utilities. So this is what we would consider the base. As Jeff said, we're going to have everything priced and sort of a la carte as to see what things are. If you can't, obviously we believe it's in excess of what you have available, but we'll at least get a good price point as to what that looks like. And all the infrastructure will be in there so that when you do want to be able to put that in there, it's available to you and you won't have demolition or some destructive site work that would have to be done to accommodate that work. So first thing I wanted to show is the area right in the center, the pavilion area. You can see my cursor. There's different ways that I wanted to present some ideas. These are all manufacturers that we have worked with. The least expensive option would be a very simple hip style roof, not a lot of ornament, not a lot of cupolas or adornments. This is probably the least expensive in that 25, 30 by 60 foot range, about $160,000. They're not inexpensive. These are pre-manufactured structures. They have hurricane wind ratings. Pretty straightforward. Just to give you an idea, what would be what I consider the low-end entry point. What we wanted to suggest is something a little bit different, and this is a way that we could do a structure that would be a little bit nicer looking. This is just a placeholder. It's not a specific proposal. That would be something that we could work through with the manufacturer. You can see the price jumps $250,000 plus or minus. This would include the different kind of pitched roofs and gables. Could involve some wood underdecking, something to give it a little bit more. Could have the seal of the city within that entrance area. Just an option. Anytime you start manipulating and adding options and features, the cost goes up. Yes?
Does the pricing that you have here include the slab or just the structure?
That would be the structure installed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so any of the flat work would be something that would be separate.
Okay.
And then another option, this would be the absolute least expensive option. This is a pre-manufactured structure that this is one of our parks that we did. This is still in that 140 to 150 range, but I mean, it's a nice feature, but it doesn't necessarily have a little bit of extra flair that might be warranted for this kind of project. But so you're talking about entry level 150 up to 250, 300,000, depending on what it ultimately is, for something that's around that 25 by 55, 30 by 60 foot. It's a pretty good size structure. You're going to get quite a few picnic tables and benches. If you had small parties or receptions, it's a pretty good size. It's what we think would be appropriate for that particular area. Before I kind of jump to the next thing, I don't know if there's any comments, thoughts, or discussions that you would, want to share?
On the higher end pavilion, the second one,
Yes.
I know it's just kind of, could that be modified in any way? Or
Absolutely. This was just an image that we got from the manufacturer. We said
Okay.
we wanted something that had I'm not the architect, but, that gable style that might be able to have a graphic or a saying or the name of the park or something like that, and something that might have, in a typical manufactured pavilion, you would just have the metal roof with the metal structure. This one, I think, is showing kind of a wood underdeck, just to give it a
shingles?
little bit more of a homier feel. Could have shingles, could just be a metal roof. So there's all kinds of options that are available. This would be probably at the higher end. It's got thicker columns, but yeah, this is just one example. Any other thoughts?
Well, so do we want to kind of get a thumbs up as we go with each one before we move on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have one question. What is the lifespan of the more expensive one versus the entry level?
This particular, so I've got a couple different manufacturers. They're usually in that 10-year kind of warranty. Now, if you put wood or an asphaltic shingle, something like that, the warranties will sort of change and depending on what the feature is, but at least a 10-year warranty, 10 to 15 years for all the metal work. All the metal work is manufacturer painted, powder coated, so it's pretty durable painting, and it's goes up pretty easily.
I think the question was lifespan, right? How long
Yeah.
would it last
Oh, I mean-
before it had to be replaced?
Well, that goes into my next question, which is, so I live in a community here in the city where we have something similar with wood, and we're seeing already cracks in the wood, and so I help out with the HOA, so part of that is like what's covered into that warranty. So that was my next question.
Yeah, I mean,
If
these
you-
structures, the metal work is at least 10 years, but you're going to get 20, 30 years out of these because it's manufactured, powder coated in the factory. I have pavilions that are 20 years old that still look really good. If it's all metal, as soon as you start adding,
Like if we do wood, just for the sake of, because we're looking at one that has wood right inside the pavilion, so if we were to do that, do you know what that would cost us later down the line if something?
I don't know the specifics of that particular part, but it's going to be at least 5 to 10 years before you'd have to do anything because it's not exposed in terms of the moisture and things like that. I've done several pavilions that are over 10 years old that have a wood underdeck, and they're perfectly fine. And it's more of a harder wood, and once again, that decking is preserved and pre-treated at the factory, so it's all covered.
And I would say that, I don't know the specifics of that, but if that was a custom-built piece, then it might have a different longevity issue.
Yeah.
or-
It's a new development, like 5 years, and we're already seeing cracks in the wood,
Yeah.
and it's,
I mean, absolute
Not a good thing.
lowest maintenance, metal roof, metal structure, no wood, no asphalt, you can still have a nice-looking structure. That's 15, 20 years before you probably have to do anything, assuming.
So we're recommending this metal roof here on that 250?
Yeah, I wanted to show you one that had quite a few extras to it, but if you really wanted to have the least amount of maintenance whatsoever, everything metal. You
Okay.
know, Metal R-panel roof, metal structure, and go that route. This
In
one
that case, I
happens to
have
be the
another
one I have.
question. Could the metal be manufactured to look like something like that versus all wood?
I don't know if this specific manufacturer has, there are some manufacturers that do like a metal shingle, shingle, but normally it would be what they call standing seam on R panel, where it's flat that has the ridges where the panels connect. But that's a good question. I don't know. We've done some work on trellises and pavilions, smaller pavilions, where you can do a faux wood. We could look into that. I don't know specifically with this manufacturer.
Yeah, and basically, the reason I like that, and I like that from the other presentation you gave us, is because it looks good, and all metal would be better if we could make it look pleasing to the eye versus just a metal shed or pavilion. I'm gonna just throw this out. My thoughts for this park was to bring in the history of Manvel. So I was you said something about a frontier town or something like that earlier, or I misheard that? So I was kind of hoping to bring like a train, kind of, it was a train station that started Manvel. So I was kind of thinking is along those lines, and that, to me, kind of looks like a train station.
So kind of a depot feel?
Yes, like a depot feel, but if we don't want to use wood and we want to use metal to make it last longer, so I was just kind of seeing, that's what I was saying, if the metal could be manipulated to look something like that, I mean, are they